Shalom. What will the world look like in the days of Messiah? B'yamei HaMashiach. Things will be great. Short answer. No worries. No problems. No anti-Semitism. You can eat all the bens you want, you won't gain a pound. It's perfect. And Maimonides asks the question and shares an answer that is really quite remarkable. And I'll use it as a way to launch into what's going on this week with Whoopi Goldberg and the banning of mouse and what I consider to be an assault on the memory of the Shoah. Maybe you'll agree with me. But look what Maimonides says about the days of the Messiah. He says, Kol Sifrei HaNevi'im, all the books of the prophets, V'chol HaKetuvim, and all the books of the writings, Atidin, in the future, Levatel, will not be used or read. They'll be canceled out. You'll have no need for them. Limot HaMashiach, in the days of the Messiah. That means Haftorah, it's out. He never heard Ivan chant Maimonides. He probably would have changed his opinion. But for all those who think Haftorah is a chance to go have a snack and take a break, well, guess what? In the days of Messiah, Haftorah is out. According to Maimonides, we'll just be studying Torah, that we keep no matter what, and one other book. And it is the month of Adar, though we have 2 months of Adar. We're leading to the holiday. What's the one other thing we'll study in the days of Messiah? Chutz mi Megillat Esther. That's incredible. The only thing we're going to study in a perfect world is the Torah, obviously, that's a given, but the story of Purim and the story of Esther, why? It's a wild claim. But Maimonides and our sages go along with this, seems to be saying that in a perfect world, when you have nothing to worry about, and there's no violence, and there's no anti-Semitism, and it's all good, don't you dare forget the story of the near annihilation of our people. Don't you forget the near genocide that the story of Esther tells. And our strength at that one moment when God really felt silent. Because if there is a book that parallels the Shoah, the Holocaust, in Hebrew literature, in biblical literature, it's the story of Esther. God is mysteriously silent, and yet our strength somehow allows us to persevere, cross over, continue to flourish afterward. That's the one story you never forget, even in a perfect world, according to Maimonides. And the sages go along with it, and they deepen it, and they say, perhaps, even in the days of Messiah, the only holiday you're going to celebrate, not Rosh Hashanah, not Yom Kippur, not Sukkot, is Purim. Because never forget. Because you should never forget. And you look at the line that Maimonides ends on, it's a verse from the end of the Megillah. V'zichram lo yasuf. And that memory of our near annihilation will never end, will never be forgotten, mizaram, from their descendants forever and ever. I bring it up because of this week. I consider this week, in the days following International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and that makes it so much worse, to be, in a lot of ways, we've seen an assault on the memory of the Shoah. You have the banning of the book Mouse. Does everyone know? Is everyone familiar with what happened this week? You have a Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel that tells the story of the Shoah in a way that kids can understand. And that's not an easy thing to do. And we need books like that. Obviously, in a world of Holocaust denial, you would be shocked by the statistics. Asking your average American, what's the Holocaust? Hearing their response would shock you. and not just denial, but misrepresentation, minimization. Oh, it wasn't as bad as they say. We need a book like Mouse to teach a 7th grader and an 8th grader and a 9th grader what happened. And the book in a school district in Tennessee is banned. There's some foul language. So don't tell them about the Shoah. Despicable. In the days after International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and scary to me, because they banned books in Nazi Germany too. Then, the aftermath of that deepens the problem. Whoopi Goldberg goes on The View, and in her way, and I don't want to just criticize her, though I'm passionate about this. She was suspended for 2 weeks. Maybe you think there should have been more action taken against her. She says the Holocaust isn't about race. Just white people killing white people, she says. Okay. Now, not only is this beyond insensitive, how clearly ahistorical. To know what Hitler said, the Jews are an inferior race, and that's why we have to entirely obliterate them. And she comes and says, well, it's just some white people killing other white people. This isn't a racial issue, which is a form of minimizing. It's a form of trivializing anti-Semitism, certainly, because we're thriving in this country, and we appear to be white, so we can't possibly be the victims of any hate crimes. She did apologize in a very brief Twitter statement. You can read it and see if you think it's a real apology or not. But what bugged me the most was her appearance on The Colbert Show. So you should read this article. The View, Holocaust Controversy, Are Jews White? Is Whoopi Goldberg Jewish? Really important article. But it explains what she says there on The Colbert Show. This was her attempt at explaining herself. See what you think. If the KKK is coming down the street and I, Whoopi Goldberg, am with my Jewish friend, I'm going to run, Whoopi Goldberg says. But if my friend decides not to run, they'll get passed by most times because you can't tell who's Jewish, she says. It's not something that people say, oh, that person's Jewish, so it's not really race. Now, that was not a description of my experience as a guy who wears a kippah, who has heard plenty of anti-Semitic comments walking around. It probably is not your experience either, where you say nice to meet you and you share your last name or something like that. But it's certainly, thinking about the Shoah, was not what happened. Because if you look Jewish, if you didn't look Jewish, if you believed in Judaism, if you were an atheist, it didn't matter. They traced you back and they sent you with everyone else. And for Whoopi Goldberg, who's a bright woman, who changed her last name to Goldberg because she says it's in solidarity, apparently, with the Jewish people, which I didn't realize, not to get that. It's scary to me, and it upsets me, and I hope it upsets you. She's suspended for 2 weeks. Maybe you think that's not enough. Maybe you think it's too much. I'm not going to tell you. You can do your own research. But the message that she's sending to millions of followers that an attack on a Jewish person is somehow not a racist attack. It's somehow minimized. It's just white people hurting other white people. It's not such a big deal. That, to me, is scary. And in the days after International Holocaust Remembrance Day, it's just pathetic. So Maimonides said, in the days of Messiah, don't forget the truth about who we are and what happened to us. We're a long way off from the Messianic age. That, I don't think I have to tell you. But we owe it to the 6 million. And we owe it to the survivors. And we owe it to their families to be upset when the memory of the Shoah is trampled on. and we owe it to them to be defenders of what we know to be true. You want something to do this week after Shabbos? Go on Amazon, buy a copy of Mouse, and give it to a non-Jewish friend. That's my homework for you. Give it to someone who needs to learn. Give it to an 8th grader who needs to learn. Explain to them why Whoopi Goldberg's comments are not innocent comments, but are not only deeply hurtful, but just plain wrong. And I hope we'll fulfill that verse from Megillat Esther, Lo Yasuf Mizoram, that their memory, the memory of Jews who have suffered at any time, but the Holocaust in particular, will never part from our lips, and we will be the defenders of the truth that they need us to be forever. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Okay, let's continue on. Chatzi Kaddish, the Musaf.